Hey guys, Sneaky Snake here, brothers in arms, World of Warships, and today's video we're going to take a look at our next Tactics and Strategy series video, and this one features exclusively on kiting. I'm playing in the Helena, the Tier 7 American Light Cruiser, and I'm playing by myself on Trident in the Domination game mode. So, what is kiting, and how can you get better at it? It is one of the fundamental things at World of Warships that you need to at least be competent at to have a good understanding of tactics and strategy, on where to go, on target prioritization. All of that ties into, in some way, shape, or form, being able to position yourself appropriately for a nice kiting engagement. And you'll see a lot of the top players, and even a lot of the really good players on the server, they will be able to do what is known as kiting to a degree that is detrimental to your team, because they're able to put you and your friends in situations where they are at an extreme disadvantage. And this replay you're going to see here is probably one of the best examples of kiting that I can think of in recent memory for a replay to share with you guys. What's going to happen here is that for the entirety of this game, I'm going to be retreating away from the A cap, delaying the enemy push as long as possible, focusing down ships one by one, staying alive, of course, and having a great result at the end of the game. And hopefully all of the little tips and tricks that I show you in this replay, you're going to be able to think about and then apply to your game so that you can be better at kiting. Now, you might be thinking, well, Sneaky Snake, the Helena is an American light cruiser, and that's not normally a ship type and class that is associated with being a good kiting ship, and you are right. However, if you apply the basic fundamentals, you will be able to kite in almost any ship, because you'll get a good understanding of the whole risk assessment matrix. Now, what we're going to see here is there's a trio of enemy cruisers over next to the A cap. They're southwest of the A cap, and you can see that they're all lurking around, getting ready to try and get on to that capture point. So I realized that trying to go near or into the cap is going to be a very bad idea, because at the end of the day, much like destroyer combat, you never want to get into a 2 versus 1 with 2 cruisers while you're in a cruiser, because there's just too much potential DPM that they're going to be able to bring down upon you that you're not going to be able to accurately give back. So you can see here immediately, myself and Larry the Chicken are in a 3 versus 2 situation, so we're immediately going to turn away. Both of us, however, are focusing on the York, and we are putting ourselves in an angle that it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to get good shots, because we're providing a very small profile of our ship to shoot at, whereas conversely, with the York's case, he was flashing his entire broadside to turn away, and you can see just how many hit points he lost in that little engagement right there. However, I'm already thinking to myself, looking at the minimap, there's a couple enemy battleships that are sitting south of B, and I have a strong suspicion that they're going to try and shoot at me as I round the corner of the island. Now, whether they do or not, that doesn't matter. I am angling to a threat that is being posed by enemy battleships, and that's something that, of course, just in general for cruisers, you got to know where the BBs are so that you don't get blapped, but I wanted to disengage from that situation over there, and I was successfully able to do so while only losing about 2,000 of my hit points. Conversely, the York took a lot of damage, the Nuremberg did not, and I don't believe the Pensacola did. However, I realize at this point in time, we're down 2 ships, it's 215 to 370, the enemy team is capturing the C point, and they will be able to capture the A point here not too long, and then you can see a Scharnhorst and a Kirov are also over here as well. So what I'm going to do is get into a nice kiting position. Now, it's something that Flamu has talked about on quite a few of his videos from numerous occasions, and it's how to effectively position the right way in the most efficient way. Now, what you're going to see me do here is angle away from all of the enemy ships and put whatever ship is furthest to the right, in this case, under my gunfire. The angle that I'm providing to the Nuremberg, to the Pensacola, to the Kirov, to the Scharnhorst, to the Gneisenau that comes over here, all of those ships are going to be shooting at a very slender profile that I have, and I'm able to bring most of my gunpowder to bear on the target that is perpendicular to me the closest. You can see the Pensacola is giving chase, but I've now gotten myself into a position where it's going to be very difficult for the Kirov, the Pensacola, the Nuremberg. It's going to be very difficult for them to get very good shots on me. And all the while, I'm still putting myself into a position that once I get undetected, I can then move about freely and get ready to try and head off this enemy assault. You can see that the rest of my team has moved well to the east, and we're now getting into a very bad situation here where the enemy team has more than half of their forces assembled for the push through A. I, of course, cannot stay anywhere in the vicinity of the A objective, where I would get taken down very, very quickly by the combined fire of at least 5 or 6 enemy ships. So now what I'm going to do here, as the Pensacola is unspotted, I'm going to open up fire here on the Scharnhorst, get a couple fire set, maybe get a couple base defense ribbons, but then as the Pensacola does get spotted, once again, I'm immediately going to go into the kiting position where I am shooting at him and angling as best as possible to everybody else. Now you might be wondering, Sneaky Snake, why did you go broadside there to shoot at the Scharnhorst? I wanted to get the base defense ribbons on him, and the Pensacola wasn't spotted. As soon as that Pensacola threat is understood, then of course I'm going to angle back towards him. And you can see here that there's going to be a lot of shells that come in from the other enemy ships, and because I'm also changing my course and speed ever so slightly, I'm actually going to have a lot of potential damage by the end of this replay. Now this Pensacola here is now in a very bad situation because of what the Helena is as its own entity. The Helena is an American light cruiser with 15 152mm guns, and these guns are capable of dealing an exceptionally large amount of damage with IFHE infused. And this Pensacola here already used his damage control on one fire. I am able to get most of my firepower to bear over the shoulder here. I do have to open up a little bit more to get that third turret into play, but you can see here that I'm continuing to kite away from the A objective. A lot of the enemy ships are too far away to really get effective fire at me, and most of the shots that the Nuremberg has been shooting at me have been well off the mark. I still have more than half of my hit points to work with, and this Pensacola is slowly getting whittled down. And basically, what I'm doing right here, this that you're seeing is kiting in a nutshell. Like I said, I really couldn't find or think of a better example right here. I mean, I'm almost up to 1 million potential damage, which for a Tier 7 cruiser is nothing to scoff at. And this Pensacola is taking the bait. He's continuing to advance on my position, so that's why I'm continuing to play with the speed. There's no reason for me to let this guy get away. He's down to 7,000 hit points, and he is on fire. You can see that once more I am changing my course and speed, trying to throw off his aim. I'm still at a relatively decent 17,000 hit points to work with, and I should be able to finish off the kill here on this guy not a moment too soon. I do get a fire on him, put him down to 21 HP, and then I get my first kill of the game on that Tier 6 American heavy cruiser. I'm down to 14,000 hit points, but I do have Adrenaline Rush on this guy, and I'm still kicking. I'm still in a pretty good position. You can see here that the enemy team's push over there has kind of stopped a little bit. And maybe one of the reasons why that happened is because once they got the A objective, they were a little bit indecisive, but at the same time, you saw that as their friendly ships were starting to advance piecemeal, they were getting hit hard by some of my friends that came back, but also myself, I was able to get a pretty good amount of damage dealt to some of those ships over there as well. I hit the York hard very early on. I was able to get a lot of good damage on the Pensacola, and he was baited into following me until his destruction. And now what I'm going to do is go undetected and try to deal with this Nuremberg. Now, this particular example that you're going to see here is not as good of an example of kiting, but at the end of the day, it still gives you guys a good understanding of just the basic tenets what I'm trying to get at here. Now, you saw that the Scharnhorst did take some pot shots at me right there. However, because I was continuing to maneuver around and change my course and speed, he was not able to land any critical salvo on me. So I still have 9,000 hit points to work with, which is okay. You can see that the enemy team is kind of stalled still over there, just to the east of the A objective. But now what I'm doing here is getting into another 1-versus-1 engagement versus this enemy Nuremberg. And like I said, I cannot stress how important it is that when you get into a kiting situation, you want to put yourself in a position where you're only dealing with one enemy ship at a time, because the Helena, of course, has the DPM to be able to sink enemy ships, specifically cruisers, really quickly, and there's no point to put yourself into an engagement where you're going to be dealing with 2 ships at once. Now, I'm getting some really good over-the-shoulder fire here at the Nuremberg. He does open up broadside, so I am tempted to switch to the armor-piercing shot. You can see here that I'm continuing to angle as best as I can and taking minimal damage from his armor-piercing. He finally gets a pretty decent salvo, but not before my next one going down range manages to get some very good hits into him and put him down to 4,000 hit points. He does switch to the high explosive and puts me on fire. However, I am also changing my course and speed, trying to angle from potential shells from the Colorado and the Scharnhorst. So the next salvo that goes down range does get a Citadel on Nuremberg. However, I was turning very hard to the left because I was just thinking that maybe the Scharnhorst was going to take a shot at me, and that's exactly what happened, and I only take 1 over penetration, as I do get a little bit lucky by the RNG. The Scharnhorst did make a good salvo right there. However, I was able to angle enough that the rest of his salvo fell off the mark. In that engagement with the Nuremberg, he was at about a little bit more than half HP while I was down to 9,000, and I was able to get the kill on him while only losing about 7,000 hit points in total. So I'd say that that engagement ended up pretty well for me. Now you can see that the enemy team is finally getting into a bit of a push here, trying to get towards the B objective. So the next thing I'm going to do is to continue to kite away until I get behind this island and utilize a more, I guess, efficient or a more effective American cruiser playstyle where you're able to get behind islands and you're able to throw shells and arc them over and just kind of shoot from cover and potential concealment. However, in that kiting situation, I was able to sink 2 enemy ships, deal 84,000 points of damage, and I was able to, most importantly, stay alive so that I was still able to utilize my DPM and I was still able to utilize the guns to good effect. I get a very nice kill steal on the Kirov on 83 hit points, but now I'm in a position where the Gneisenau is coming into me, and he's going to now deal with my sustained DPM as I continue to shoot shells downrange. My adrenaline rush is now got my reload down to 6.9 seconds with 15 shells, so this is some pretty terrifying firepower that you're able to bring to bear on the enemy ships. But anyway, getting back to that first bit of the replay, I really hope you guys just get a good understanding of that whole kiting thing. You never want to get into more than a 1 versus 1 against those cruisers. And the second that I realized that myself and the Atlanta were outgunned, even though we did have a lot of DPM to bring to bear, there's no reason to turn bow on. There's no reason to try and win that engagement because you're just not going to. It's something that I think the average cruiser player doesn't fully understand just how quickly you can lose your hit points when you're fighting against other enemy cruisers. And the whole time I was paying attention to the minimap, I was paying attention to where the enemy battleships were, and if you noticed, I never took one giant hit from a battleship in a ship that is not very good, or it's not ideal to be in a kiting position in, but I was able to, put myself out at just far enough of a distance where I was able to maneuver around and have a lot of the shells that were fired at me miss, and I was still able to utilize my damage per minute to very good effect and to, just deal solid damage, keep the pressure up on the flank even though we had lost full control of the flank, and ultimately help the team win the game. Because you saw there that I'd have to say that me being over there just in that position maybe stalled the enemy team a little bit to the point where they were not able to really move out of the A objective, and I really do feel that way. And as I managed to pick up Kraken, I turned a game that was looking very, dicey at the very beginning into a Kraken and 110,000 points of damage, and it just really showcases how important this skill is. So with that being said, guys, we're now going to go take a look at the post-battle results. Alrighty guys, taking a look at the post-battle results, I did end up a few minutes later in the replay getting some shots at the Leon, who was the last guy alive, but I didn't really need to include that. 114,000 points of damage, 5 ships killed, 7 fires, 3 citadels, 177 penetrations because IFHE infused 152mm guns are capable of a lot of damage, and of course I did pick up the Kraken. For the team score, 5 kills of course, I ended up with about 2,300 base XP in this game, so I was easily tops on the leaderboard, and like I said, that first half of the replay, putting myself into a nice kiting position, changing my course and speed, messing with the rudder, utilizing the Flamu method of focusing on the guy that is closest to your perpendicular while angling away as best as possible to everybody else, bringing as much or all of your firepower to bear on that one guy at a time, and just slowly whittling them down, and then going to the next ship, and then so on and so forth. And I mean, that's about as basic as kiting can get. There were probably a few other things that I could have mentioned, but I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds, and I hope that you guys get an understanding. Now, you might be thinking, well, if you were in a better ship for kiting, do you think you could have had a better result? Well, certainly. The Helena is not a kiting ship at heart, but knowing those basic fundamentals right there is something that is going to improve your overall cruiser play and is going to be able to get you to a point where you feel comfortable maneuvering around in open water, shooting in open water, and not really worrying about getting blapped or anything, but just dealing damage and being able to still apply pressure on a flank where the enemy team is overrunning, and basically going, hey, look guys, remember, you can't forget about me over here, look at the birdie, something to that effect, and I hope that this replay was able to get that point across to you guys. So with that being said, this is the Sneaky Snake for BIA World of Warships signing off. Thank you guys for all the support that you give us, thank you for watching this video, and have a fantastic day.